everyone, and welcome to this ultra special, first of its kind episode of Psyched to be with you. A little Psyched to be with you, a bite-sized chunk of the familiar podcast that we all know, you know, and love. Not only that, our first ever returning guest joins me. They'll introduce themselves in a moment. They have their own episode. So we can do a little biography, lots of littles, and then we're going to be getting into this episode. So my very special guest, if you could please just introduce yourself.
My name is Dr. Rachel Kowert. I am the research director of Take This, and I think the reason I'm here is because I am the editor of a new book, the Psychgeist of Pop Culture, The Witcher.
There we have it. This new the unscripted, unabridged, bite size. One topic we're going to drill down. We're talking about Psychgeist of Pop Culture, The Witcher, new book. I also want to be the X number at this point person to compliment your wonderful dress. If you could describe for those listening at home.
I'm wearing a dress from the Black Milk Clothing. They did a Witcher launch like a year ago, and I managed to snag a Witcher dress. And I don't wear it that often, and I wore it today, and I've gotten so many compliments, which means I must wear it every day now until the end of time.
Yennefer Vangerberg, eat your heart out. That's all I've got to say. You know what I mean? So, the Psychgeist of Pop Culture, what's that? Psychgeist is your kind of brand name, business operations?
Yeah, Psychgeist, I came up with a new phrase to describe it. It is a multimedia content production studio, which consists of my YouTube channel, Psychgeist, but also now the Psychgeist of Pop Culture series of books, which is being published by ETC Press, which is hosted out of Carnegie Mellon. And it is a series of books that highlights iconic pop culture stories through the lens of psychology. And of course, because you know me, and hopefully your listeners know me, or if they don't, they know me now.
If they don't, how do they not? Like, let's start back a moment. Like,
but if they do, the one thing they know about me is that The Witcher's kind of my thing. So The Witcher had to be first.
The world famous Cavill influencer, R.I.P. gone but not forgotten.
You know, I did have a birthday cake once that said Cavill influencer, and I believe you gave it to me.
I did with friend of the show, Beth Thomas, had a huge hand in making that happen. But we did present you with a Cavill cake. We love that. So, how do you make a book like this happen?
How do you make a book like this happen? You have the idea, and then you pitch it. And thankfully, Brad King, who is one of the editors at chief at ETC Press, I have a long-standing friendship and working relationship with him. And I said, hey, this looks like kind of a series that I've been thinking about for a while. I'd really like to do it. And he was like, yeah, we'll have that. So it was pretty smooth.
Okay, so you got the deal in principle.
Got the deal.
That's all well and good. Then you gotta make a book happen. You describe yourself as the editor. What does that mean?
Yeah. So I had this idea basically of looking at different aspects of The Witcher through a psychological lens. So since I'm very familiar with the subject material, I was like, okay, what do we want to talk about? We want to talk about loss and trauma, and we want to talk about unrequited love. And what are kind of these basic psychological elements that we see time and again in these stories? And so you write them down and you make a list and you think of the different characters. And so you start out with kind of a rough, like, okay, here's 8 to 10 ideas that I think would be really great in this collection. And then you say, or at least I did in my process, who are 8 to 10 people who I think would be really great at writing these stories. And I started reaching out to them, being like, hey, I'm doing this cool thing. And thankfully, they all my friends are really cool, and they all got on board.
They all took that bait.
Yeah, they did. They did.
So obviously we're talking at this at a point in time where the book is what I would describe as post-production. It's ready for release, basically. We don't have a release date at this time, but it's there, it's done. How different is the end product from what you envisioned when you thought about it initially?
It's such a good question, and I was just talking about this with a colleague of mine. It's better. I knew it would be good, like genuine. I was like, this is going to be great. It's The Witcher, and it's a lot of great colleagues who are really good at writing. It's just beyond what I even imagined it would be. It's thoughtful and it's funny, and there's a chapter in there about a character I wasn't familiar with because it's from the Blood and Wine expansion, which I haven't played. And I read that chapter and it made me like actually cry when I was reading it. And I was just like, wow, this is just really powerful and really poignant. And it's just so good.
Okay, so we have this book and we have our authors. What's that dialogue like? Because I mean, you said your friends are really awesome, but like, did you kind of say, "Listen, I have this idea. Would you want to write for it? Do you want to pick from this list?" Like,
Oh, question. Yeah, so I had definitely some ideas that I for sure wanted included in the book. For instance, I wanted a chapter on unrequited love, talking about Tris, because I find that Tris is so heartbreaking in the books, and I definitely wanted to honor her and honor her story. And so for that, I reached out to a colleague. Her name is Celeste San Giorgio, and I said, "Hey, I think you would be really great to write this like specific chapter." And she was like, "You know what? You're right. You pegged me. Like this is the one I want to write." Whereas others, I had set ideas, and I said, "Hey, I really think you'd be great at writing this." Like when I approached you, and you said, "Actually, I want to write something that you didn't even think of and is not even included in this remit, but I'm going to tell you why it's important."
all right, well
And that's what you did.
let's get into that. Just set
Yeah.
the scene here. It's September 22. You are in the UK keynoting at a conference because legends be doing legendary activities. You decide for some reason to hang about with me in Liverpool.
Did.
And I'm pretty sure we were at dinner and you were like, "So Chris, I've got this idea, got this book. Would you?"
Yeah, would you do it? I hadn't even pitched it yet, I don't think, to ETC Press. I just had it was marinating.
And you were
And you
like,
said,
"Would you do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I can't remember what it was, but you said like, "Oh, would you maybe do this or this?"
yeah, I
Right?
don't remember, but you did neither.
And then I was like, "Let me cook on this. Let me cook on this a
Yeah,
little bit."
yeah,
And it was 2 days, I think, later. We
I
were
was
in.
leaving.
Yeah, it was the day you were leaving. We were in the lobby of a hotel
You
at
were.
like 9 a.m. or something. And I was like, "Okay, senior colleague, friend of mine, Dr. Rachel Kowert, you've presented me these great options, but I'm a bit of a wild thing when it comes to nerdy stuff. How about this?" And I pitched my idea.
You did pitch your idea, and I was like, that's an idea I've never heard before. But you seemed really like, no, no, it's great and it's going to be good. And I was like, sold. And that's where ethics and the Witcher Code. There it is. I'm looking at the draft next to me so I don't forget any of the authors or any of the titles, and it's chapter 1, 2, 3, chapter 4 with your name underneath it.
Don't know how that happened, but
There
I'm
you
not going to
go.
complain.
Happened in a hotel lobby in Liverpool.
Yeah, I'm going to call that home field advantage
There
and
you
call that. I think it's strange for me, and I guess we were going to do like a chapter by chapter, but we'll just get into this
Yeah.
because we started. I was only like, I think, 2 books into the series at that point.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
what really stood out for me was the experience with I forget what the creature actually happened to be, but it's in the series as well, where like it's like they call it the devil, and like a misspelling of devil, and like Geralt's like, "I'm not gonna kill it. It's not actually doing anyone any harm, but I'll tell it to move." He ends up getting knocked out and he get captured by the elves, right?
Oh, yes. Right.
And it really got me fixated on this idea of like, yo, Geralt is essentially a mercenary, kills monsters for money, right? But like, even he has things he won't do, you know? And just that idea within the world. And then by the
Mm-hmm.
time you get to like, I'm on Lady of the Lake at the moment. Tower of Swallow really gets into it, but like, for me anyway, ethics was it's a huge portion of the story. If you take out all the monsters and magic and action, it's mostly people sitting around trying to make the best of impossible situations.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
I kind of basically picked an area that is not only immensely complicated, but also not necessarily like in my field of experience. But I just thought this would be fun, and I
You
really
did
enjoyed just going away and learning stuff. Like,
Yeah, no, you did a great job. And you're right, it is, there's that famous quote, I'm gonna get it wrong now, where it's like, evil is evil, it's not lesser, it's not greater, right? Geralt says that to Strikerboard, I think. And I think that really gets at the point of like, he is ethical in his decision making, even despite being a mercenary. And I think that's what makes it So interesting. Also, kudos to your chapter, because it is the only mention in the whole book, and it's a little bit of a tragedy, but at least it's in there once, of Oxenfurt, which is my favorite city in the Witcher world, in the continent.
Exactly right, and I think it's really fun because like the world is governed by so many different sets of rules, and again, I was kind of fascinated by that. And then obviously we have the spindle in the works of war and how that changes. Um,
Yes.
I also want to use this opportunity to essentially thank you, but also really highlight the quality of your editorial process.
Thank, thank you, sir. That's very,
Because I had never done anything like this to this scale, to the scope.
yeah,
And you
yeah.
know, you very much helped. We work. I feel like we worked on it together. I'm gonna say
We did.
maybe, you know,
That's a good collaborative relationship.
to really get something that I'm personally quite proud of. I'm very very happy with what's in it.
Great. It's fantastic.
So that's chapter what number what chapter was that, Rachel?
That's chapter 4.
Chapter
Chapter
4.
4. But you know, chapter 1 is the intro. Does that really count? I don't know.
Yeah.
I wrote like a really short intro. It's like 500 words. I don't know if that counts, but that technically is chapter 1.
Okay, so let's roll through it. The introduction does it introduce the entire series as a whole, or just really like this book?
No, it's called Welcome to the Continent. So it's a brief introduction about what The Witcher is, transmedia experience, very popular book, very popular game, very popular Netflix series. And just kind of regurgitates the little blurb that I pitched you all when I hooked you in, about why it's important. So it's kind of just like a little short little note from me.
Do you think that this book is accessible to people that maybe like aren't like maybe like massive book nerds or game nerds? Like, do you think this book is for any particular audience?
Yeah, you know, the remit of the book and all of the books in the series is that, for instance, in this case with The Witcher, if you're a fan of The Witcher and you want to delve a little bit more into the characters or the stories or the psychology behind it, you'll love it. If you're like a Psych 101 teacher who's like, hey, I want to teach about resilience and trauma, but this textbook's kind of boring. Here's a chapter about Ciri and The Witcher, and that's relatable and people are super into it. I'm going to use this chapter as an intro to talk about resilience and trauma. I wanted to be able to kind of run the gamut of who could engage with it and get something from it. So it's really for everyone. It's written, you know, not in an academic style. It's written in a very accessible way. The chapters are not super long. They're easy to read. A good, you know, bedside table book, if you will.
I certainly tried to make mine conversational. I crack a few jokes, things like that. I
Yes.
my kind of belief with I'm gonna say content as someone that makes content is I don't make anything that I wouldn't consume myself.
Right. Yes. And I think with academic stuff, like I'll consume academic stuff, but that's clearly a different tone than like I wanted my husband and my mom and my friend's teenage son to all be able to read it and understand it and get something out of it, you know?
Dr. Rachel Kowert here, champion of scientific communication, writing a book to such effect.
There you go. There you go.
Let's go through the list. Next chapter, what we got?
The next chapter, chapter 2, is Embodying Geralt Through Vocal Performance, which is written by Doug Huckle, who many of you may know is the voice of Geralt in the games. He wrote a bit of a memoir style piece. It's a little shorter than the other chapters, but it really talks about how he came to get the role as Geralt of Rivia and how he developed the voice and how he embodied that character. And it is so good. Like, I'm gonna say, like, every chapter is my favorite chapter, but when I read his chapter, it was really kind of like behind the scenes. You felt like you were peeking behind the curtain, because we know that Geralt's voice is so, at least to me, so iconic.
It is. It's iconic. Even like in
It is, right?
meme
Yeah.
format. Like I hadn't played the
Yeah.
games. I've played like a little bit of Witcher 3, but like I knew who it was. I knew the voice.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fantastic to hear his perspective, and he's a good friend, and he's a wonderful human, and it's the great piece to open the book, I think.
Next chapter, what we got?
The Outsider Within, Geralt of Rivia Through Monster Theory. So this was written by Seth Pierce, who is a professor of, I want to say theology. And it is more of a theory chapter around this idea called monster theory. And there's several components about what makes something a monster. And he outlines each theory, and he talks about, or he questions this idea of, is Geralt really a monster? Looking through the lens of this theory.
I mean, as someone who resonates with, the white-haired, challenged, like, gruff hero, I always find it, like, because, in one insult, he's actually described as albino. I
Mm,
think in one of the earlier books. So obviously, I resonate with that, and it's like, when you are othered, you really are othered, and it doesn't matter if
right.
Geralt is or is not a monster if he is perceived as one.
This one. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a really nice kind of foundational piece to understand that perception and where it's coming from and what really makes a monster a monster.
And then the next one's mine, which we've discussed. Totally fine. I think people would. It's ethics, but like, if the good place was a success, this chapter can be a success as well. You know what I mean?
I mean, Ethics in the Witcher Code by Christopher Leach is an excellent overview of moral dilemmas and how Geralt approaches those in various different situations throughout the book. And I think it's really important insight, like you said, to understand that despite being a mercenary for hire, like he still has his scruples. Like he's not just going to kill everything for money, even though you would think he would based on his job title.
Yep. Next chapter.
Monsters of Men, Geralt and Non-Toxic Masculinity, which is a chapter that I wrote alongside my colleague, Dr. Kelly Dunlap, which is interesting because actually our original idea, we were going to write a chapter on mental health representation in The Witcher, and then it kind of changed and turned into an essay kind of rebuking this idea of toxic masculinity through the lens of Geralt and how he is meant to be this really muscular man's man, but he, does not embrace the traits that would necessarily be associated with that kind of persona.
Yeah, I don't see Geralt as like a lad's lad. I think.
No, like right. He expresses emotion, he asks for help, he knows his own limits. Like there, we go like kind of piece by piece of how he kind of rebukes that idea. But like you, this was not our area of expertise. So it was really interesting for us to really delve deep into this idea of toxic masculinity and like gender studies and these things that we don't necessarily engage with in our everyday work.
Purely for fun, I am going to highlight the slight hilarity of two women writing a chapter about toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
We'll leave that
Yeah.
where it is. Next chapter.
Next chapter. Okay, so this is an interesting one. The next chapter is Bardic Inspiration, Jaskier's music through the lens of therapeutic song analysis by Ileana Fernandez. This chapter, I knew I wanted a chapter on Jaskier. When I did the original list of like who we have to talk about, it's like we have to have a chapter on Jaskier. And I had asked my friend Adam Davis, who is one of the founders of Game to Grow, because he is a drama therapist, if he would write the chapter. And originally he said yes, but life happens sometimes, and he had to drop out halfway through. And I thought to myself, I cannot publish this book and not have a book on Jaskier. It's impossible. I refuse. And Ileana is a friend, and she's a music therapist. And I was like, you might actually be perfect to kind of take your perspective and take your lens. And this is one of the instances where it turned out better than I imagined, because what she ended up doing is using therapeutic song analysis to analyze how all of Jaskier's songs change across the seasons of The Witcher. And the titles are literally the song heading. It is incredible. And it'll be things like the chords are disharmonious and this can indicate this. And it is beautiful. And then obviously her take on Burn Butcher Burn. I give a round of applause. It's really a fun read, that chapter.
I mean, like, that is the kind of stuff that I would want to gobble up. I'm like, yeah, that's so interesting. That's delicious.
Yeah, so good.
Next chapter for us.
Next chapter, What is Love? Tris Don't Hurt Me by Celeste San Giorgio. Good title. She might win for best title, actually. This about Tris. Tris is thirsty. Tris kind of gets the short end of the stick, like poor Tris, but she is an important and a pivotal character for many reasons throughout the narratives of The Witcher. So I wanted to make sure that she was given her due. And so this chapter is all about her and her perspective and her experiences.
I would like to point out for listeners' benefit, because this is a behind the scenes thing, I am firmly Team Tris. I'm pretty sure at one point in my chapter I mention, like, who you choose to romance in The Witcher 3. And we had quite an ongoing discussion in the comments about...
I said Tris was the wrong choice.
And I, steadfastly disagreed.
Damien! No, I know. I think that's still in your chapter, Team Tris. I think I left it because who am I? Who am I to deny Tris her love?
Give her her own chapter. Not a fan, though.
I did. Next, Psychology of Attachment, Yennefer Vengerberg, who was written by a friend, I believe, of the show, Marie Shanley, or Anxiety. She took on Yennefer and how her childhood and her relationship with her parents ended up informing all of the, some may say, bad decisions that came to follow in all of her intimate relationships, for instance, with Tisea and with Geralt and with Istrid and the other people that she engages with.
And Yen's such a fascinating character as well because of the kind of additional kind of lore that we get through the TV show and the way sort of other threads are presented in the books as well. And then you also have the game content. So
yeah, that's a great point. And when I did the book, I got a lot of questions from authors saying, should I only draw from the show? Should I only draw from the books or from the games? And I said, draw from them all, or just draw from one. Draw from what it is that inspires you. And with Yen, it's very firmly in the show, but with Triss, it's from all the media, like all the little different bits. So it's really kind of cool to see which threads are being pulled in each of the different chapters.
Excellent.
Yeah. What do we have next? Oh, trauma. Everyone, a light topic. Resilience and Trauma. It's a chapter focused on Ciri by Jared and Elizabeth Kilmer. I knew Ciri obviously had to have her own chapter, and Ciri's kind of underlying thread of all the things is the consistent amount of trauma that Ciri suffers at the hands of others. But it's also about resilience and about how she takes the trauma and manages to still become, a strong, powerful, steadfast woman in her own right. And the fun fact behind the scenes about this chapter is it had no notes. I got a rough draft and I literally wrote nothing on it. And I remember giving it back to Elizabeth. She's like, well, I didn't think it was like that good. Like, I feel like I should still see it and make edits. And I'm like, you really don't. Like, it's no notes.
No. Okay, wow.
I know.
GG.
Yeah.
I feel like there's just so much you could say about Ciri. Such a great character. Again, like, Ciri really does get put through the ringer a lot.
She does. It never really ends. But I think the perspective that they bring to this chapter is really about the growth mindset, right? So it's not so much about what you experience, but how you channel those experiences.
I feel like you could have done, like, not you could have, but like I feel like I would like to maybe one day write about Ciri and the pressure of being a protege from like the PhD supervisee's experience and how with the weight of expectation, being the child of destiny, like.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That would be an interesting perspective.
Because, no spoilers, but your girl Ciri is popular, in demand.
She is. Everyone wants to hang out with her.
Or other, more evil things.
I didn't want to use no
spoilers. Next chapter, what we got?
Next chapter, Authoritarian Parenting. This is a chapter on Tisea. At the beginning, again, when I was like, who do we have to have chapters about? I wanted Tisea to have her own spot because I think that her character is so, I don't know what the adjective is. There's something about her character about how she's so stern and refined and composed, but also incredibly powerful, right? She runs Aretusa. So the perspective here from Ashley Elliott and Sarah Hayes was called authoritarian parenting. So her parenting style, parenting with an iron fist, so to say, and how that plays out in the lives of her mages.
And I think Tisea is like a very, very good kind of a secondary character. Sounds reductive, but like maybe one that doesn't have as much spotlight as she does influence on other events, right? And I think maybe I'm misremembering the books a little bit, but like especially with like the slight adaptations that were made in the latest season, I feel like that took away from Tisea a little bit. Not to just dunk on the TV, it's not that type of podcast, but I think like in the book, the strength of the characters may be more amplified, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's a fair.
Next chapter.
Next, this is the last one that was like, I have to have a chapter on this character. Who's going to write it? Paternalistic Leadership: The Life and Times of Vesemir. I love Vesemir as a character, but I also love Orin from Final Fantasy X. I think I just like the grouchy old men of the story, like, which I feel like Vesemir is. So Hayden Jones took on this chapter and he talked about not only the way that Vesemir is portrayed in the books and the Netflix show, but also in the animated series we got about The Witcher, which kind of showed you some of Vesemir's backstory and talked about how Vesemir's upbringing really informed the way that he raises his Witchers. And it was really great to see not only like the little bit that we all kind of know of Vesemir from the show, but getting a lot of insight more into the backstory and kind of how he came down that path.
Especially when, like, it really is like, come on, lads, you've just gone through these horrific experiments to become witches. Let's go.
Let's go. Yeah. And then how he takes the Ciri, right? Which is like different than how he took to his Witchers. And yeah.
Interesting. Next chapter.
Yeah. Last but very much not least, this is the only other example, actually, in the whole book where the chapter was pitched to me. And it's called The Psychology of Monstrosity. I'm going to pronounce the name wrong. Emil Regis Rolek Teresic Godfrey. Regis. You may know him
from
the Blood and Wine expansion. But he has lots of names. Regis is by Amelia Herbst. She loves Regis. It's her favorite character. And this is a love letter to him. And I never played the Blood and Wine expansion. So all I know about Regis is the things that she's told me or the things I've seen on the internet. And I am not lying. I literally shed tears reading this chapter. She talks at the end about some of the interactions and some of the dialogue shared between Geralt and Yennefer and Regis. And it was just, I don't know, very moving. So this is a chapter about Regis and who he is. And again, through the lens, kind of like Monster Theory, like the beginning, but a little bit different. She talks more about monstrosity and he's a vampire. And does that really make him a monster? Or what actually makes him a monster and his relationship that he shares with Geralt. And it's a great kind of like end cap, because like you said, he's not like a main character per se, but he's a very important supporting character. And I think it really just kind of ties everything together about this idea of monsters and men.
I firmly do want to say, on the record, I'm a huge fan of Regis.
Okay.
Comes into the books, I think, from Baptism of Fire onwards. Incredible character. Also gave me one of the few moments in the book where I laughed out loud on a train and everyone looked at me, and I have no regrets. I'm going to regale this quote now. It's a little bit blue, so if you've got younger listeners around, just turn it down for this moment. But like, he's minor spoiler, but he's discussing about like, the who he is, right?
Yep.
And how that relates to specific stereotypes. And he makes this comment. I was like, yeah, you think that we're going to take your women and we're so perverse because we do these things like, oral sex, and it's so perverse. And like a, medieval religious sort of, particularly sort of Christianic kind of, you wouldn't do anything for fun, you do it for procreation, God. And then just next line is, Geralt mutters, speak for yourself. Absolutely burst out on this train. I was like, hilarious.
Fantastic piece of dialogue.
Absolutely exquisite. And like, one of the things that like I can't wait to see happen on screen, if it does happen.
I know. We'll see. I mean, I think there's only going to be one more season of the show. I think that has been announced that we just finished. Okay, I will say at the time of writing the book, season 3 had not been released.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we're speaking, season 3 has been released. And I did hear, I believe that season 4 is meant to be the last season. So we'll see where the story ends or where they get to, or if Regis is there.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a fair bit of ground to cover if that's what they intend to do.
One season. Yeah, for sure.
But not impossible, I guess. Nowadays, anything's possible, right?
You speak the truth.
I speak empty platitudes, but that's me. Okay, so that was the last chapter. Is there like a formal conclusion in the book? Do we go back around?
There's not. That's it. That's the book. So you have the little introduction, and then you have the series of kind of core chapters, and take from it what you will. I think for me, it really is a book about kind of understanding the motivations more, and just kind of getting a richer perspective on these characters that we already know and love.
And I was gonna bring this up to you next time we spoke, and I'm pleasantly surprised that this is live during an episode. But some chapters got tweets. Some chapters got tweets about how good they were or how moving they were, and others did not. So I'm not going to accuse you of playing favourites or anything, but
fair. I love them all. They're all my children, I feel like. I will say, I don't think, like I said, all of them are my favorite. I could make a solid argument for any of them to be my favorite. But I will say there are a bunch of tweets planned when the book is actually released where I will be tweeting about all the chapters, but I haven't done it yet because we don't have a release date yet. So you can't like pre-order it or anything yet. So now it just seems cruel to tell people about how awesome and great this is and then be like, sorry, only I've seen it.
I will
But
say, like, again, we're recording this as promo. By the time you're hearing this, you will be able to pre-order, links attached
oh
for every
yes,
episode, all
yes,
this business.
yes,
But at that moment, things are scheduled.
yes.
It's all up there.
Scheduled. It's in the. We're just waiting for a few things, but the manuscript is done. It's edited. I have it in front of me. I've seen it. It's brilliant and beautiful, and it's 224 pages. There's
That's
a lot of Witcher in there,
that. Do you know what? That's actually like a really good amount for a book, though. Like,
right?
that's like really digestible, not too heavy. Like, you're not going to strain yourself reading it, you know?
No, you won't read it in one go, right? It gives you a little bit of meat to hold on to.
Excellent. So I think, is there anything, because, a couple chapters were on your list, they were pitched to you. Is there anything
Yeah.
that you wish you could have had included?
Well, now that Siri chapter that you mentioned about like the expectations, that sounds great, but dang, the book's already done. I will say in the original pitch, before Henry Cavill was announced that he was leaving the show, I very much wanted Henry Cavill to write a chapter about embodying Geralt. My idea was I would have Doug, the voice actor, write one about embodying him. Andrea's the writer of the book to write a chapter about embodying Geralt through writing, and Henry to write a chapter about embodying Geralt through acting. I was unable to successfully reach two of those three people. I'm very grateful that Doug wrote a chapter, and I think it's brilliant and wonderful. But I would have liked to have the three because I thought it would have been a really interesting contrast about embodying through writing versus embodying through voice versus embodying through acting.
Interesting. I think, yeah, definitely would have added like a different type of flavor, but
Right?
I don't think it. The book is no worse off for not having them, right?
No, no. And it gave me an excuse to slip into Henry Cavill's DMs, which I very much unashamedly did for
Like
business reasons.
like you hadn't already at least thought about doing
I
that.
had not. I am a respectful woman. I had not. It was my first DMs slipping in. But
Okay,
alas,
fair.
that's not the best way to reach someone. But I had no other option.
All right, so that's kind of Psychgeist of Pop Culture, The Witcher.
It is.
But I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity as editress. Is editor a gendered term? I don't know. As the person leading this flagship series,
Yes.
can you give us the scoop on what else we can expect to see the Psychgeist of Pop Culture of?
Yes, there are a few unannounced projects in the works, but of the announced ones, we're going to see the Mandalorian, I believe is going to be the second one to come, followed by Umbrella Academy,
Mm-hmm.
which I believe is going to be the third one. In production now, we also have Black Mirror, which I know that you and I are both writing a piece for. It's being edited by Dr. Sarah Hayes, and then Dr. Kelly Dunlap has just started work on the Psychgeist of Bluey, which all the parents out there rejoice. And we have the Psychgeist of Discworld, Terry Pratchett fans, the Discworld series. So those are the ones currently on the docket that are in production and have been publicly announced. And there's another 4 or 5 kind of behind the scenes percolating at the moment across games and television and film.
And again, like we can, I feel like I can share without naming names of things, but I sent you like an email. It's like, okay, like just idea, and your exact reply was like, "Haven't you got a thesis to write?" And I was like,
You pitched a good idea, and I think that your idea, which shall remain nameless, will absolutely happen. Someone else has offered to do that idea, and I rejected it because I'm saving it for you.
"Oh,
So there you go. But you have to write your thesis first because I'm a true friend, and I would never add that to your pile when you have a thesis to write.
so Dr. Rachel Kowert just called me a true friend. I can die happy." Me with zero editorial experience, but I can edit a book. I know people. Like,
I know. You're smart. You're smart. You'll be fine.
all right. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this additional content, aside from your flagship episode, if you will. Um, the first ever a little psyched to be with you, the first ever returning guest. These are big milestones.
No, well, thank you for having me and letting me talk about this project. I mean, I feel like it's a love letter to The Witcher, and it's funny. I cried a little when I saw the draft. Like, it's really, I feel like it's my child contained in all my little child chapters inside of it. So thank you for giving me the space to gush on it for a bit.
There is something really special. Yeah, I spoke about this in the run up to us recording this about like seeing a proof of a book with like my chapter in it, and that's a very emotive feeling when like you see like something that because like the Witcher chapter was a lot of work, right? Like
Yeah,
I put some effort into it because I cared about it, and seeing that like ready to go, it's going to be entirely different. It's going to blow my mind when I physically see it in print, I think.
me too. I
um
know. When you like open the box and it's in there and you can hold it. Oh, it's such an experience. Yeah, it's cool.
is it coming out in paperback, hardback, e-reader, audiobook?
It's coming back. Maybe. No plans for audiobook at the moment, but I'm down. It's coming back out in paperback. And the wonderful thing about ETC Press, which is why I paired with them, is all of their content is made freely available online in digital copy. So everyone can access it. Everyone can read it. If you want to buy a physical copy, awesome. Buy one. The cover is going to be great. I saw some mock-ups this week. But anyone can access the content for free once it's published.
That's excellent. I've already warned all my friends and family that that's what they're going to be getting for consecutive holidays. Just various
That's right.
like
I
books.
do.
I'm gonna sign them as well because obviously I'm a gentleman.
Obviously.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, of
Like
course.
I'm also gonna buy myself like 2 copies, and on my travels I'm gonna try and get all of the authors to sign their respective chapters, and then I'm gonna auction one off for Take This. That's my plan.
Oh, that would be amazing. That would be
I
amazing.
also am obviously selfish and want one for myself because of course I do.
Well, of course. I mean, now I feel like I have to carry one around with me too, because that would be awesome to have everybody's sign.
And also, just I feel like I'd be silly not to ask, but like,
Yes.
you've now written the book about The Witcher.
Mhm.
Where do you go from here? Like, are you still going to carry on reading the books? Are you going to play the games? We need to get some of the authors and play the TTRPG for no reason.
I know. Well, you know, Seth Pierce, the guy who wrote the theory chapter, there used to be a live action LARP in Poland. They shut it down. It was a Witcher live action LARP, and he talks about that in his chapter. And I wish I could do that, but they shut it down. What's next for me? I'm really campaigning. Let this be my pitch to be a voice. Should there ever be new Witcher IP a game? I would love to have a voice in the game. I think that's really where my campaign will land. I'm still reading the books. I haven't read them all, working on it. And I wish I had more time to play Witcher 3, but I don't. I'll be honest. I've played it and it's fantastic. Not all of it, most of it. But you know, I got 3 kids and a job and I'm writing books and stuff. So I will just
Hard to
continue
squeeze
to
in
love.
200 hours of content while also doing
It's
that.
hard to squeeze in an RPG. I will continue with the book. I love the Netflix show. I will continue to watch the show. Should it have its final season? And yeah, I will just, you know, I have all the Witcher things to keep me happy. I have, before we go, can I just show you my newest pride and joy? In celebration for me finishing the book, I actually ordered a House of the Wolf Witcher sword
Nice.
by this place called Pocket Forge, where he has an actual forge in his backyard, and it was hand forged, and it is sharp. It is a proper sword. So this is my little keepsake for me for finishing the book.
I can expect that authors of the book will receive their token gifts post publication.
I let the record show that my original reaching out to Pocket Forge was, I want to get one for all the authors for their respective schools, because some are Wolf and some are Griffin and some are Viper. And then he was like, that's going to be like thousands of dollars. And I was like, cool, I'm just going to get one for me. And so you will have gifts, but it won't be this, because they're very expensive.
Fair. Well, it's all come out in the wash. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me. I hope listeners at home have enjoyed this insightful behind the scenes look, promotional material. Check out the book. Links attached to this episode. Go read it. It's free. Go read it. Read it online. Buy a copy if you like it. If you see me in the street, I'll sign it. Tell your friends.
Talk about it on the internet. Yeah. Yeah. Let's do it.
use a form of social media, because all of them, I guess, at the moment. And just very quickly, where can people find you on the internet?
I'm still on Twitter, X, whatever, at Dr. Kowert. I'm also on LinkedIn, I guess, is my fallback. And also YouTube. You find me on YouTube at Psychgeist. I will always be there.
Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.
There you go.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you, Rachel. But for now, as we all say in the show, look after your mind, body, and soul. Bye-bye.